To understand the predicament that Big U faces today, being accused of leading one of LA's most notorious gangs, we have to go all the way back to the start to understand how these gangs, and Big U, ended up running the streets of LA. Like many black families during the mid-1900s, Big U's parents were part of the so-called Great Migration, where African Americans moved from the southern states to the northern states to escape the Jim Crow laws and look for a better life. They were originally from Mississippi before making their way north to Chicago. In Chi-Town, Big U's father would allegedly get affiliated with one of the original infamous gang leaders turned revolutionaries, Jeff Fort, co-founder of one of the earliest major black street gangs in America, the almighty Black Peace Stone Nation, cementing an early gang influence in the Henley family all the way back then. Big U's parents would ultimately get separated during their time in Chicago, and in 1966, his mother would move to Los Angeles shortly before his birth. The family settled in an area known as South Central, this being the area where most of the early black residents of LA would settle down. More specifically, they would stay around 81st and Hoover, and according to Big U, it was here where he would first begin to rep the Crips, the gang which was founded in South Central around 1969, around 3 years after Big U was born. Founded by Raymond Washington and Craig Craddock, the Crips then spread further west by Tukey Williams, who would found the West Side Crips.
Because in the area where we grew up at, we grew up over there, was already saying Crip, and it was already saying Hoover in it, and it meant something different.
Big U had a very large family tree who would all move to LA, and the majority of them would eventually settle near Slauson and Arlington, to an area that would eventually become associated with the Rollin 60s neighborhood Crips. But at the time, there would be earlier gangs.
We got here, the homies wasn't here yet, and then Van Ness Park didn't have no structure, nothing. And I think Big Bunchy was from Fruittown Brim. So it was like Fruittown Brim was in Van Ness Park. The 60s was on the verge of being formed, like it was just West Side Crips. And then it was West Side Crips and it was neighborhood Crips. And the neighborhood Crips was like down the line on the other side, like on Van Ness, like more towards where eventually like the hood took over. It was neighborhood Crips and West Side Crips.
This neighborhood is not only famous for being the home of the Rollin 60s, but also for being one of the main locations where the classic movie Boys in the Hood was filmed. Growing up, Big U would first become part of a small local clique from the immediate neighborhood called the AG, or Arlington Gang. Led by Big U's cousin Chili Capone, the group would eventually merge as part of the larger Rollin 60s, who became infamous around the city of LA.
We was at every party, we was at every club, we knew where every function we was there. And it was funny because dudes would be like, where y'all from? And we from the AG. They're like, man, what's that? We're like, man, it's the AG, man, ain't no what's that. Then it's like, well, where is that at? Man, it's on Slauson and Arlington. Oh, well, y'all from the 60s. All right, fuck it, man, what is it, a problem? And then they would go from there.
Big U would get into trouble with the law from a young age, and already as a kid during the 70s, he claimed to have run with a car robbing crew, eventually getting sent to juvenile detention and spending a period of time on the run from whatever he'd done in LA and going back to live in Chicago with his father. But some years later, in 1979, one of the longest and bloodiest gang wars in LA history would start between the Rollin 60s and their former allies, the 8-Tray Gangster Crips. Sometime later during the early 80s, Big U's cousin and the leader of their AG clique, Chili Capone, would sadly be killed. Now, the more matured Big U would return to Los Angeles to seek vengeance, with Big U saying that at this time he graduated from fighting to guns and he believed that a gun could get you anywhere you need to be in life. Standing at 6'2", Big U was an intimidating sight even without a gun, and he would still excel at fighting, which was the main way that the early gangs would settle their differences. One of the infamous places where this settling of scores would take place was at the World on Wheels skate rink, which was far away from the Rollin 60s hood, but where the members would nevertheless go to make their presence known. One particularly big brawl would make the Rollin 60s infamous throughout LA County took place on August 1986 during a Run DMC concert in the Long Beach area, where Rollin 60s would, according to Big U, attend purely to start a fight and establish their dominance. The fight would injure dozens of people and cause the LA Palladium to cancel Run DMC's next concert in fear of escalating gang tensions. During the 80s, the county jail would also become a familiar place for Big U as he was racking up some pretty serious charges, which according to the criminal complaint even included multiple first-degree murder charges and attempted murder of a peace officer, but it seemed that these charges back in these days would never stick. But his time in jail would also help him further spread his reputation as a fearless fighter and a charismatic leader. According to the FBI, it was during the 80s when Big U would rise to a prominent position in the Rollin 60s, earning a reputation of a violent enforcer who was willing to kill. One article about Big U stated that he became the lead man for the Rollin 60s and got shot 7 times in the process. And during this time in the late 80s, this was when the crack epidemic was beginning to reach its peak.
Today, there's a new epidemic. Smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack. It is an explosively destructive and often lethal substance which is crushing its users. It is an uncontrolled fire.
Big U and the Rollin 60s would also partake in the lucrative drug trade. They would even begin to move dope from LA to other cities such as Minneapolis, Atlanta, and Chicago, where Big U would use his leadership skills to set up shops and take over street corners and influencing other out-of-state sets that banged under the banner of the Rollin 60 Crips too. This would also be a time when Big U would get his first experiences in the rap industry, as a rapper called Poppa LQ would ask Big U to manage him, thinking that while Big U had no experience in the industry, he did have the qualities to be a manager and the respect of the streets. Big U's friend would also ask him to help managing a young, promising Rolling 60s rapper called Corrupt, who's now known for such West Coast classics as Seawalk and We Can Freak It, as well as being one half of the duo The Dog Pound with Daz Dillinger, the group founded by Snoop Dogg. Big U had also become a family man at this point, and according to himself, he was beginning to be 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the hustle game, but unfortunately for him, he would become wanted by the police, and in December 1991, he was arrested as part of a sting operation after attempting to rob 33 pounds of cocaine from an undercover agent, with Big U pulling a gun and attempting to rob the fake plug, leading to the cops that were watching nearby to rush in and bust him. For this, he was given a monster sentence of 23 years, with news reports at the time describing him as a leader, if not the top man of the Rollin 60s. This meant that during much of the golden years of hip-hop, Big U was behind bars, but he would spend his time inside continuing to develop his skills as a fighter and a leader. One story even circulated that he had apparently knocked somebody's eyeball out of their socket during a prison fight. Photos of Big U behind bars would circulate online as the years went by. During a Breakfast Club interview, Big U would even say that he was running the drug trade in the prison yard during this time.
Because I basically took over the whole little drug trade on the yard because I had money. So I came in and I bought all the guards who was bringing in.
But when he wasn't squabbling or selling drugs, apparently he was knuckling down and trying to also find positive influences behind the wall. During his long stint inside, he would meet people who would inspire him to evolve intellectually, such as Michael Harry O. Harris, a powerful LA figure who allegedly played a key role in helping Suge Knight found Death Row Records, and also played a part in the career of Denzel Washington. As a result, Big U would begin to read and write, as well as studying subjects like theology, as he would later recount in interviews. Meanwhile, on the outside, Corrupt would keep Big U's name alive in his music, shouting him out in songs like one of his biggest hits, We Can Freak It. Big U would also keep losing people close to him to the streets while he was inside, like his brother Dwayne Dupree, who worked as a bodyguard for the Dog Pound duo of Corrupt and Daz Dillinger and was sadly killed as gunmen opened fire outside of a recording studio. But Big U would eventually end up only doing 13 years in prison, getting out in 2004 at 37 years old, conveniently right as the Rollin 60s had become, quote, the largest black criminal street gang in the city of Los Angeles. However, Big U wouldn't lose sight of those positive influences that he had gleaned behind bars, and he decided to reinvent himself as a community advocate, starting his non-profit called Developing Options. Their website would claim that Big U started the organization because he wanted to provide the youth of his neighborhood the support that he didn't get when he was growing up. In 2025, the program claimed to have served over 6,000 people while having partnerships with hundreds of agencies. The website even boasts a 90% reduction in community gang violence, and the program has some major supporters, such as perhaps the most famous Crip in the world, Snoop Dogg. But Big U would also keep building his career in the music industry, and after getting released, Corrupt would introduce him to the head of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, who would help Big U financially to get back on his feet and take him under his wing as a mentor. The two became without a doubt the most respected, or at least the most feared duo that the hip-hop industry had ever seen. But Big U's ferocious attitude to the music industry would mirror Suge's approach, and unfortunately, this meant that for the artists that entered Big U's orbit, some would have runaway success, but others would seemingly suffer sudden and tragic downfalls, which of course brings us to the tragic story of Nipsey Hussle.